Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this Pensions Dashboards Programme webinar, giving everybody a update on where we are on the programme. I'm delighted to be joined today by a wide range of speakers. We'll be joined at some point during the next hour by Alexandra Lally, who is also from the Pensions Dashboards Programme, Kirsty Armstrong from the One Login team, John Higgins joining us from the Department for Work and Pensions, as well as Lucy Stone from the Pensions Regulator and Caroline Donnellan from the FCA. My name is Chris Curry and I am the industry principal here at the Pensions Dashboards Programme, and I'm going to be your chair for the session, as well as giving some of the updates as we go through. Just before we get started, the usual housekeeping rules we go through. So we are recording this session and it will be published after the event up on our website. So if we go through things too quickly and you'd like to review it, or if you'd like to share it with colleagues, you'll be able to do that afterwards. And also we'll be leaving plenty of time at the end for Q&A. However, please could you put any questions in the specific Q&A tab. This will help us be able to monitor and record any incoming questions that we have, and also make sure that we can then answer them after the event as well. We have a very good frequently asked questions newsletter that we'll be able to pick up some of these answers in as well as we go through. Those were the main kind of items that I need to do before we get started. So we're going to move on now and go through the agenda. So what we're looking to do really, I think, is firstly to give you an update on where we are on progress, going through from the Pensions Dashboards Programme. Hopefully some of you will have seen that there's been a written ministerial statement as well, and John is going to tell us a little bit more about that. But also we're delighted to be able to share more information as to what's been happening with our partners as we go through this programme. This is very much a joint effort between Pensions Dashboards Programme and all of our delivery partners, as well as with you in the industry. And so, as you can see, we'll be hearing from TPR and FCA, as well as the gov.uk One Login team and the MoneyHelper Pensions. There'll also be an update on that as well. And as I said, we'll leave about 15 minutes, hopefully, at the end for Q&A. So please do get those questions in. And the sooner you get them in, I think the more likely they are to be answered as we go through. So with no further ado, I will kick off the agenda and it will be me to give you a quick progress update on where we are. So as you will all be aware, we usually do a written progress update report as well. We'll be publishing what's actually our 10th progress update report, which will cover our recent work that we've been doing to make Pensions Dashboards a reality later on in November. So in the report, we'll provide details of the work that we've been doing, the achievements, and there have been many over the last 6 months that have moved us closer to Pensions Dashboards becoming a reality. And we're also going to be including some insights from one or two other events that are happening in November as well, which we'll come on to a little later in the update. However, we thought it was really important, rather than waiting for this to be published and out in writing, to give you a verbal update on the progress ahead of the report as part of our regular engagement with the industry. It's very clear that we've been working on connecting the first of our volunteer participants to the dashboards ecosystem, and we've also been continuing to refine and issue updated versions of the standards in draft for now as we go through, and developing plans for user testing of the live service with our MAPS colleague, and all of these will be things that we'll touch on. So on our volunteer participants, as I'm sure many of you will be aware, we've been working very closely with a group of over 20 volunteer participants made up of pension providers and schemes, third-party administrators and integrated service providers. And in August, as planned, the first of these volunteer participants began their connection work as part of a phased approach to volunteer participant connection. 6 of those organisations, so just over a quarter, have so far started the process for connection, as we carefully monitor their progress before inviting in more of the volunteer participants. So this approach, very deliberate approach, will allow us to test and refine the process for connection as we go through, and also generates insights for other organisations who are due to undergo this same process later on in the timeline. So with that testing happening at the moment, we're continuing to work towards the connection timetable set out in guidance by DWP back in March of this year. And while this connection deadline provides certainty for industry and ensures that connection remains mandatory, the staging timetable in the guidance provides a phased approach to connection to help manage the volume and flow of connections and ensure that onboarding can happen in a way that provides some stability and is staggered across the industry. So the current phase we're going through at the moment with the testing is specifically designed to provide an opportunity to test this connection journey. And each connection journey is likely to provide, as we're finding, different challenges and different lessons for all parties as we go through. For that reason, we're not setting out a precise connection schedule in advance of what we're doing, but we are kind of learning as we go and involving all of the volunteer participants in the discussions as we go through this journey. So following this phased approach ensures that providers and the schemes are ready for connection in line with that staging timetable that I mentioned. And that staging timetable itself is very important because that will then support extensive user testing as soon as we can. And that in turn will make it possible to launch the service to the public as early as possible. So it's important that pension providers and schemes make use of the existing resources that we have and that we've produced both by ourselves on PDP and also by the industry. We know that PASA has done a lot of really good guidance out there, and the PDP guidance can be found on the website as we go through. I think it's also fair to say that it's been a busy 6 months with a lot happening externally and in the environment in which you operate. And we've continued to attend external speaking engagements to raise awareness of the programme and the progress that we're making, but also to help the industry understand what it is that they need to do as part of their duties. And personally, I can say that we've been giving quite a few presentations and speaking at quite a few panel discussions. I'm sure there are plenty of you on this call who have heard me maybe a little bit too much, but I'm not going to apologise for making sure we get the information out there about pensions dashboards. Looking ahead for the rest of this year, 2024, and into 2025, we will be attending and hosting a number of speaking engagements, so we will continue with that collaboration and engagement going forward. One thing to mention is that on the 19th of November, the programme will be hosting a town hall event for specific invitees, which will bring together representatives from industry, the government and regulators to explore how connection is progressing, and so an update on where we are through the phase we're currently going through. And we aim to include insights from this town hall event in the upcoming progress update report as well. So that will be reflected when you see the written version later in November. So we're also going to continue to work collaboratively with industry and other partners by attending our external working group meetings, hosting the Connection Forum. So there'll be more webinars such as this, the Dashboards Forum, those that we do with our voluntary participants, such as the Connection Delivery Group, but also the Communications Working Group, and looking at setting up other communities of interest as well as we go forward. So we'll continue to use insights and experience that we've gained from our volunteer participants to then support the wider industry connection as we get into that next year. And the volunteer participants really have played a crucial role, not just in going through the connection testing, but helping us develop the standards and other supporting materials, such as the testing resources and guidance that are going to be very important as we go through. And I would like to just say, again, and give thanks to industry, the government and the regulators who've all continued to show a real collaborative spirit. And I, the whole team at PDP and MAPS, remain grateful for all of the hard work and commitment that is going on right across the industry and all those different stakeholder groups to make pensions dashboards a reality. When we do publish the full progress update report, that will be available on the PDP website, and which will also signpost, and we'll also signpost to that, of course, through our usual social media channels and our newsletters. And hopefully many of you are already following those and know where to get information from, but if not, there'll be information provided on that later. Now, I mentioned as part of the work we've been doing over the past few months has been on standards. And I'm sure many of you will be aware that the Pensions Dashboards programme, as part of the Money and Pension Service, has the authority to set the standards around the ecosystem for pensions dashboards. So the standards relate to the practical operations of pensions dashboard services and the digital infrastructure needed to support them. And I'm sure many of you will be aware that standards support connection, including the data standards, technical standards, reporting standards, and the code of connection. And that code of connection itself includes service, operational, and security standards as part of that as well. So there's been extensive engagement with our volunteer participants, particularly on the code of connection, technical and data standards. And the feedback has been and will continue to be, I think, invaluable in making sure that these standards are there fit for purpose going forward. The updated versions of these standards are supporting the connection testing that started early this year, as well as the wider industry staging preparations. At this stage of the process, industry should be working towards the most recent version of these standards, which have been published on the PDP website. And we do also advise industry to refer to the change log just as a quick way to look at any changes that may have happened from previous versions going through. Some of those standards, such as the technical standards, also have a corrections log errata. This is a list of known issues and corrections for the current version, and the corrections will therefore be included in the future versions that go through. But we want everyone to have the best opportunity to use the most recent version of standards. We're looking to publish updated versions of other standards, including the reporting standards, over the coming weeks once they've been tested and validated with our volunteer participants. And there may be some further revisions to the draft standards before final approval by the Secretary of State, but we will continue to engage and update industry as we go through that. That is one of the features of testing, is that we are likely to come across things that we will need to improve as we go through, and we want to make sure that we can do that in a way which works best with meeting the needs of the industry as well. The final set of standards, which I haven't talked about yet, the design standards. So these are the standards that dashboard services firms will need to adhere to, and which will sit alongside and complement the FCA's rules for dashboard services, are still being developed as we go through and will be informed by user testing. And we'll focus our attention to these design standards in due course. At the moment, our focus is definitely on those that are needed for connection, as that's generally our priority at the moment. So the other area that I wanted to focus on before we get into the updates from around the partners is the testing resources, because as we've mentioned, testing is a really important part of the phase that we're going through at the moment. So PDP has published testing resources to support testing industry's connection to the ecosystem, and that includes the system test pack and also guides and downloads. And these can now be found in the testing section via the connection hub on our website. So as part of the connection process, there are two types of testing that pension providers, schemes connecting directly, or ISPs and administrators connecting on their behalf, must complete: system testing and integration testing. So within the system testing resources, there is a system test pack, test cases, and other related downloads. And we've also provided some supporting guidance on the test harness. This will help those connecting directly to the ecosystem know how to set up and operate the test harness and how to execute the test scripts. We're also currently working on the integration testing pack and guidance, and we're currently undergoing user research with the first volunteer participants, and these will be published in the Connection Hub on the PDP website once we've had a chance to finalise them and take on board that feedback. But the feedback and insight that we've been collecting will help us develop these resources further and be available for the first connectors to start the integration testing phase of their connection journey. And again, this will help us to improve the connection testing for other volunteer participants. So this is really a process that we are moving through at the moment, and is, as I can testify, an actual real life process that we are going through. That was all I wanted to give as a quick update on our progress over the past 6 months, and a quick look into what's been happening, or what will be happening over the next 6 months as well. But I'm now going to hand over to Ali, who's going to talk us through some of the how to connect guidance that we've been putting together. So Ali, over to you.
Thanks, Chris. Yes, so we've been developing guidance, which is for our volunteer participants and wider industry, that's going to be supporting them with their connection journey. So the guidance itself is to support the end-to-end connection journey. What you can see on the screen here is the new How to Connect webpage that we have, and this provides information on how to prepare, the steps to take, and the resources available to support. It's accessible directly via our Salesforce screens in the connection journey, which are hyperlinked through the website, and this makes it easily accessible to the user. It's also available at any time in the website itself. The engagement team will invite those connecting directly to begin the journey and start to use this guidance. And the current guidance that we have available on the website is pre-connection that you can see here, and that covers roles and responsibilities, vouching scheme requirements, and conducting an IT health check. We also have pre-registration guidance and registration guidance. As connection progresses, we will continue to work with industry to further refine processes and guidance based off our users' needs to ensure connection is made as smooth as possible. And we're currently developing further guidance on the technical connection and post-connection piece of the journey. And this will then be available in the Connection Hub once we've kind of done that iteration phase with our volunteer participants. So we'll continue to communicate any updates and developments of industry as kind of we progress on the guidance and what's available on the website. Thanks very much, Chris. I'll pass back to yourself.
Thanks, Ali. That's really helpful and great to see the progress that's being made in the real practical examples of how we're going to be helping people to connect going forward. So congratulations to you and the rest of the team on putting that together. That's brilliant progress. Just before I move on, can I just also a quick reminder again that if you have any questions, please can you use the Q&A tab rather than the chat tab. Again, this is just to really help us keep a record of those questions that come through. And so if we don't get around to answering all of them in this webinar, we'll be able to then answer them after the event as well. So please do, if you've already put stuff into chat, move it over into the Q&A tab as well if possible, and we can then take all the questions together, which would be brilliant. Thank you. So I'm now going to move on to the identity service, and just before I introduce Kirsty from OneLogin, just to say a quick update from the PDP side that obviously the identity service is the component of the ecosystem that allows the users to prove who they are and to provide the information needed so they can find their pensions, which ensures that pensions data is requested by users with verified identities and then goes back to the same user. So a very important part of the ecosystem. Now, on the 17th of September, PDP confirmed that the gov.uk OneLogin would be the chosen ID service provider. I think it's fair to say there was a little bit of response around that announcement, and we've had a number of queries from industry, in particular about whether a user's address is a verified attribute. So I can update to say that users' address included in the find request are provided by the identity service. UK addresses are checked to exist and through credit records demonstrated as having an association with the user. We know that it's not exactly the same as being verified to be the user's current address, but we think it's in line with what's used in many other verification services, including those in the industry, so should not be that dissimilar to that which is currently being used elsewhere. And more information relating to the verified or not address will become available on the PDP's website in due course. But I'm now going to hand over to Kirsty from OneLogin to give more detail as to what it is and how this can be applied to dashboards. So Kirsty, over to you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Kirsty Armstrong. I work for the gov.uk OneLogin programme and have been supporting on the pensions dashboard programme onboarding for some time now. I'm going to give you a quick overview of the product and the user experience in this short presentation, but we've got a lot of resources available online, ever expanding, so please do take a look there for further information. So what is gov.uk OneLogin? It provides a single way for users to create an account, log in and prove their identity in order to access government services. And just to explain where we sit within government, the programme sits within the Government Digital Service, GDS, which was part of the Cabinet Office. In July 2024, it was announced that GDS is joining the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology, together with the Central Digital and Data Office and Incubator for AI. And that move drives forwards the digital changes needed to fundamentally improve the British public's experience of interacting with the government, so it becomes personalised, convenient and time-saving, in line with our vision for this programme. And as I said, OneLogin provides a single way for users to create an account, log in and prove their identity to access central government services. It replaces the previous landscape of siloed and duplicative sign-in and identity proving methods, providing one front door for connected services that will continue to be operated by departments. And these are the key outcomes of the programme. As well as creating that step change in user experience, OneLogin is projected to realise significant financial benefits over 5 years, and those projected benefits savings are a mix of economic and social benefits. Inclusion and accessibility are at the heart of the OneLogin programme, from the use of plain English to regular user testing, and I'll come on to a bit more about that in a minute. And additionally, our threat intelligence and counter fraud team proactively monitor, investigate and intercept fraudulent activity, and they work to ensure our product features are counter fraud by design. We're actively working to tackle barriers to the use of OneLogin. We continue to work to expand the evidence base so that it supports both thin file users and those without photographic identification. One Login has simple and intuitive content, and for those who are less confident using online tools, users can seek assistance from our UK call centre, which I'll talk about in a bit more detail shortly, and they can also visit the post office to prove identity in person. We've developed a helpers guide for those assisting others in using One Login, and that includes advice on downloading and using the app, which can be part of the journey. And we're also exploring further ways to support users with access issues, which involves actively working with the voluntary sector. So here's a snapshot of the journey. Users can create an account with their email address and password. They will also set up two-factor authentication, either through getting text messages containing security codes, which can be sent to a UK or an international mobile phone number, or they can get a code generated by an authenticator app. They can use these details whenever they need to sign into a range of government services, and if they forget their details, there's a process for recovering them. And as mentioned, here are the routes that you can use to prove your identity. Users can currently use their web browser, the highly rated ID check app, and the post office for in-person proving. We'll check that their ID documents are real, that they're a real person, known as the liveness check, and that they're the same person as in the document photos, also known as a likeness check. And that variety of evidence is continuing to expand, as I mentioned. Currently, the evidence a user can provide determines the route a user takes through One Login, and there's more information about specifically how that works online. But evidence includes a UK, Northern Ireland or EU photocard driving licence, any passport with a biometric chip, and a UK biometric residence permit or card. Users can also answer security questions online, knowledge-based verification questions based on their credit record. And people can get the support they need. For instance, via the contact centre, you can speak to an agent on the phone, Monday to Friday, 8 till 8 UK time, or use a web form to share an issue, and an agent will get back to you. Web chat is available 24/7 with complex issues transferred to agents during call centre hours. And to give you a taste of how that support is being received, from a recent customer satisfaction survey, the call centre average satisfaction scores of 85 to 90%. And it remains our aim that that score grows over time, and we continue to add resources to user support as well. So thank you. That's a very quick overview of gov.uk One Login, but please do have a look at those resources online for more information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kirsty. That's brilliant, really helpful. And I think I can say we're delighted to be working with you on this. The idea of pensions dashboards being part of a kind of single digital login across a wide variety of services is something which I think is very appealing to us. So looking forward to working with you more in the future. And thank you for that update. Okay, I will now pass on to some of our other partners. And as I mentioned at the start, and hopefully many of you will have seen in the last couple of weeks, there's been a written ministerial statement. And to help talk us through that, I'm now going to hand over to John Higgins from the DWP Pensions Dashboards Policy Team. So John, over to you.
Thanks, Chris. So some of you may recall seeing me at previous PDP webinars, but not offended if not. As Chris said, I'm John Higgins, and I'm a policy team leader at the Department for Work and Pensions in our Pensions Dashboards team. And I'm sure many of you will have already seen and read the written statement tabled by the Minister for Pensions on the 22nd of October about pensions dashboards. I'm here to talk you through some of the key points from that statement and provide a general update from DWP. So the government's focus is on ensuring that the pensions system works for savers and future pensioners, helping to ensure that individuals have decent and secure retirement incomes. As part of achieving this goal, we want to make it easier for people to understand their pensions information so they are able to plan more effectively for later life. Delivering pensions dashboards is an innovative way to help savers engage more effectively with their pensions by helping individuals to view their pensions information securely online. So that brings me to the first key point I want to make. The government supports the continued delivery of pensions dashboards. I wanted to make that point clearly because we did hear from stakeholders, particularly prior to the general election, that there were concerns about uncertainty. So I hope it's reassuring to hear that the delivery of pensions dashboards will continue full steam ahead. And I'm sure the keenest ears amongst us will have noted the plural dashboards. The government does continue to support the principle of facilitating multiple dashboard services, so individuals have more choices to access their pensions information from organisations they are already familiar with and trust. I'll say a bit more on the commercial dashboards and how they fit into the plan in just a moment. We're also committed to the existing published timetable for the connection of pension schemes and providers. As you've heard already from the PDP, there has been significant progress this year towards delivery. In line with its revised plan, the PDP has begun testing the connection journey with some of its voluntary participants, which will help pave the way for the wider industry connection expected from April 2025. The government is also committed to the overall connection deadline in legislation, the 31st of October 2026. So the next key point is that the Minister for Pensions has directed the PDP to prioritise connecting and launching the MoneyHelper Pensions Dashboard ahead of commercial dashboards. And there are two key benefits of this approach. Firstly, while the government recognises the benefits that third-party dashboards will have for consumers, it's essential that consumers have confidence when they use these services. The government's approach prioritises consumer protection by enabling a period of learning while only the MoneyHelper dashboard is operational. This approach will enable us to obtain better insights into customer behaviour and have confidence that the service is safe, secure and operationally reliable before facilitating the connection and launch of the commercial dashboards. Secondly, prioritising single dashboard service provided by MAPS will ensure that individuals will be able to start seeing the benefits of using a pensions dashboard at the earliest opportunity. This is consistent with PDP's agile approach to delivery, starting small, learning, iterating, and scaling up. Finally, I just want to talk a little bit about timings. I'm sure many of you will have read and fully absorbed the contents of the written statement already, so may only be listening in the hope that you can glean a little bit more information than what was set out in that statement. Sadly, I'm not in a position to confirm concrete timings for launch today, and that's not because we have a secret plan that we're hiding from you all. We think it's in all of our interests that industry is kept abreast of expected timings so far as possible with the information we have. And unfortunately, it is just too early right now to responsibly confirm a launch date for MoneyHelper Pensions Dashboard, as we will need to monitor progress across a variety of areas, particularly all that UNISA testing that we've heard about. But we intend to report on progress to industry, and I expect we should be able to say more about that in the coming months. Once we've obtained better insights into customer behaviour from user testing and have confidence that the service is safe, secure and operationally reliable, we will provide notice to industry about our plans with sufficient time for industry to prepare resources. And as part of that, PDP will be sharing its testing plan, which will set out how it expects to scale testing over time. So when it does come time to provide notice of our intention to make MoneyHelper Dashboard available to public, this won't come as a surprise to anyone in industry. In the meantime, all eyes must be focused on preparing for connection, and that does include DWP, which is preparing well for its own connection for state pension, and we anticipate being amongst the first organisations to be connected. So moving forward, it's crucial for industry to make use of all available guidance, including the updated draft standards from the programme, as this will help to inform user testing and in turn, when dashboards can be made available to at the earliest opportunity. So thank you. I think I'm handing over now to Lucy from the regulator.
It's a double act from the regulators, actually. So, hi, I'm Lucy Stone from the Pensions Regulator, and
I'm Caroline Donlan. I'm a technical specialist at the FCA on pensions policy. So we're going to do a little bit of a tag team here on this regulators update because, and hopefully this will come as no surprise to you, this is an area where we are very much aligned and would probably end up saying the same thing twice if we did this separately. So to preserve your ears, we'll keep this relatively short. As you know, both occupational and personal pension schemes are going to be connected to pensions dashboards, and so the regulatory remits of both the Pensions Regulator and the FCA are engaged. Now, we each have distinct statutory remits, and the audiences we regulate are also quite distinct. So we at the FCA regulate the conduct of around 42,000 businesses in the UK. And in the main, these are firms that are established exclusively as financial services. They've each been through an authorization process. They have dedicated individuals and teams in place to ensure compliance with the FCA rules. Now, these teams might sit in compliance, legal, or risk departments. Of this population of 42,000, fewer than 200 are currently operators of personal or stakeholder pensions that would be in scope of these dashboard rules. And so we actively encourage those members of the firms who are involved in the practical delivery of dashboards obligations to involve their risk, compliance and legal colleagues as the first source of advice and guidance on their decisions they are making. By contrast, the TPR regulates a population of occupational scheme trustees, and that's a very large population. There's approximately 2,500. Lucy will correct me if I'm wrong. Now, some of these trustees are professional trustees, many are not, and they really need the education, guidance and support that TPR offers to enable them to fulfil their obligations under legislation. The FCA and the TPR have always worked in tandem to address risks and harms in the sector. And in the case of pensions dashboards, this is no exception. TPR will monitor trustees' obligations under the government's pensions dashboards regulations. And the FCA will supervise the rules that we confirmed in November 22, which purposefully align with the requirements in the government's regulations. Lucy, do you want to take it from there and talk a little bit about our communications and engagement?
yes, thank you very much, Caroline. So as regulators, part of our duties are to educate our regulated communities about their duties, how they can meet them, and how they can meet our obligations. So as part of that, both regulators leverage communications. We have a regulatory we both have regulatory roundups, so where we send messages to our audiences and dashboard features in there as and when required. The FCA issues emails to their regulated firms. So these 200 or fewer than 200 firms that Caroline mentioned at key milestones. So for example, if a new very relevant document is published on dashboards, TPR emails all chairs of trustees at least 12 months ahead of their duties and at several points in the run-up with very specific steps they should be taking. And we are also running a webinar on the 26th of November, which I will shamelessly plug. Please go and sign up on our website. And we currently have a social media campaign being run focusing on preparing data. So that's kind of our broadcast communications, but we also do one-to-one communication with regulated entities. So the FCA, a number of these firms will be relationship managed, so they'll have a regular supervisor and they'll meet with them regularly, and dashboards will be part of that conversation. TPR has also met with the largest occupational pension schemes to understand how they're preparing for their duties. In addition, recently at TPR, we launched a regulatory initiative. We wrote to all schemes in scope of dashboards, reminding them of our expectations around controls around data quality, in particular measuring data and putting plans in place to improve data. And we will be targeting schemes that we think might be failing in these duties for further engagement. And that is work that began in October. In addition to speaking, to communicating our expectations and speaking in focus to the very largest, both FCA and TPR, working independently or with PDP, are using surveys to assess how the whole of the population is preparing. So Each of the regulated entities, whether it's a chair of trustee or whether it's a FCA regulated firm, receives a survey where we ask questions as to how they're preparing for dashboards and whether they're ready. So that's about how we engage with our regulated entities. I'll hand back to Caroline to talk a bit about how we communicate with the wider industry and what we're doing about compliance.
Thanks, Lucy. So in terms of industry engagement, the regulators engage with industry through a range of forums. I think, many of you will be familiar with the periodic meetings that we have with relevant trade associations and through PDP coordinated events such as this webinar. Whoever's in control of the slides, if you could jump back one, thank you. We also, TPR also conducts engagement with those parties that are supporting the trustees to fulfill their obligations under the regulations. So examples of this could include administrators and software providers. And in the near future, both TPR and the FCA will be engaging with ABC providers. And this is a very specific example of where we are aligning our approach to address an area where we know there is some difficulties in progressing with delivery. In terms of compliance, again, this is one area where I do want to call out where our source of obligations might differ, but the fact that our approach to supervising and ensuring compliance is very much aligned. So for the FCA, our supervision and enforcement powers are actually set out in legislation. That's the Financial Services and Markets Act. And we apply those powers to all firms that we regulate. So we won't be having a bespoke regime or a bespoke document for our approach to pensions dashboards. The TPR, by contrast, has a different approach, and you'll be aware that TPR has consulted on and more recently published their approach to compliance and enforcement in the context of pensions dashboards. We know that there is considerable interest on what the two regulators' approach to compliance is going to be, particularly in the period from April 25 to October 26. So I will take this opportunity just to reiterate that our approach is aligned. We are committed to taking a pragmatic approach to compliance in this period, but our focus will always be on safer outcomes. So schemes and providers are encouraged to connect in line with the timeline that's been set out in the DWP's guidance. And in accordance with the rules and the regulations, once those schemes and providers are connected to that live environment, all of the requirements apply at that point. And that includes the requirement to receive find requests, undertake matching, and to return view data. Now, we recognise that some of these requirements are going to be challenging for industry to meet. But we do expect firms to take prompt and effective action to investigate and correct any issues they encounter. And that would include looking at the underlying causes for any problems and addressing those during that user testing stage. There are real benefits to the schemes and providers themselves from connecting in line with the guidance, and that is to benefit from the discoveries of the user testing phase itself. So you'll have an opportunity to test how effectively your own processes around consumer queries, producing values, etc. are working, and give you a period of time before October 26 to rectify any issues identified. We recognise that during that period, April 25 to October 26, there's going to be a scaling of users participating in testing, and risk will only potentially arise in respect of the volume of consumers who are going through that user testing phase. But it is important, even if those numbers are small, that those testers are not exposed to undue risk. And we need to ensure that the testing is effective in providing the insights necessary to give us confidence to move to a launch of dashboards. So in terms of whether or not the regulators would take any regulatory action during that period of time, I think what we'd be keen to emphasise is that there are a range of factors we will take into account, and they would include things like the nature and the scale of the impact on savers and the number of savers that are affected, and the ability of the firm to rectify those issues in a timely manner. I'm probably going to leave it there, unless, Lucy, there's anything more you want to add. If not, I will move on to an update on our other dashboard work.
No, just to pick up on something else that's happening behind the scenes that people might not be aware of, which is that we're working with PDP to make sure that we have the right data flows coming in to help us monitor compliance. So that includes, in the first instance, just information about connection, but also the reporting requirements and standards that will come in at different points will feed into us, so we can help understand who's doing what and how well they're doing it.
Great, thank you. So now turning our minds to the other FCA role in this initiative. So you'll be aware that earlier this year, the government changed the law, and the effect of that is to make the activity of operating a pensions dashboard subject to FCA regulation. And what that change in law effectively means is that any firm who wants to be a dashboard operator must either be or become FCA authorised, obtain permission to undertake this new activity, and meet any requirements that we set for firms who are pensions dashboard operators. So in terms of that final bullet point, we did conduct 2 consultations on our proposed rules. First was in December 22 and the most recent was in March 24. And in that latter consultation, we indicated that we would publish our final rules in Q4 of this calendar year. Now that remains the case, and we will very soon be publishing our policy statement. That contains our response to all of the consultation feedback and our final rules. But obviously, in light of the written ministerial statement, we won't be opening the gateway to accept authorisation applications at the same time. Rather, we'll open the gateway only when government and PDP have produced all of the information that's necessary for a firm to design and build a pensions dashboard service. So that will include things like the design standards that Chris alluded to earlier, and the DWP's guidance on the independent audit. But whenever it is that we open the gateway, we will be giving industry plenty of notice of that. And it was at that point we will publish the application forms so firms can have adequate time to prepare and submit those in time for the gateway. That's all I'm going to say at this point in time, and I will hand back to Chris.
That's lovely. Thank you very much, Lucy and Caroline. Some really good updates there, and I'm sure that's helped a number of the people that I've been speaking to recently. I think have been very interested in some of the areas that you covered there. So that's been most helpful, I am sure. So thank you very much for that update. I'm going to move us on now to the MoneyHelper Pensions Dashboard update. So many of you will know that although the Pensions Dashboard programme itself is not constructing a pensions dashboard, there is another part of the Money and Pension Service which is, and as you've heard earlier today through the written ministerial statement, that will be the first one that goes live to the public. So just a quick update on what's been happening on the development of that MoneyHelper Pensions Dashboard over the last few months. So I can confirm that in July of this year, the MoneyHelper Pensions Dashboard, including parts of PDP, which are a part of the end-to-end service, underwent an alpha assessment as part of the Gov UK Service Standard Assessment process. This is a rigorous process that's designed to ensure that all new government services are user-centred, well-designed and ready for development or delivery. And the MoneyHelper Pensions Dashboard Alpha Service Standard Assessment saw 13 out of the 14 points that have to be passed rated as green, with 1 point rated amber. So the amber is something that can be rectified within an agreed period. So the MoneyHelper Pensions Dashboard has progressed to the next stage, known as private beta, going forward. So it's worth bearing in mind that the end-to-end journey for consumers, so right from start to finish, was assessed as part of this, including the find and ID part of the journey, as well as the view aspects of the service. So it's a fairly comprehensive view that was taken as part of that. So MAPS wants to ensure the MoneyHelper Pensions Dashboard meets the diverse needs of potential dashboard users, including those with a range of access needs and different digital skill levels. And so with that in mind, the team are continuing to design, research and iterate the MoneyHelper Pensions Dashboard service design. So the build of the dashboard front and back end infrastructure that will enable MoneyHelper to receive and display consumer pensions data once schemes are connected, and crucially to begin testing next year, which we'll return to in the Q&A, is progressing well. And with that in mind, MoneyHelper are developing comprehensive plans to involve pension providers and schemes in end-to-end testing of the MoneyHelper Pensions Dashboard, and hope to be able to begin this process from spring 2025. So the team are taking a collaborative approach with industry to developing plans for testing, and are planning to share those within the coming months. Okay, that was the end of the updates, and not necessarily due to my expert chairing, but I think due to the wonderful keeping to time of all the participants, we do have 15 minutes left for questions. So we're now going to start to go through some of those questions that you have been putting in. So thank you very much for all of your interest so far. We'll get through as many as we can as we go through, but as I said at the start, we may not get through all of them, and the ones we don't, we'll provide some written answers to and circulate amongst attendees at some point in the future. So a good place to start, I think, is just following on from the final update about user testing, because there has been a number of different questions that have come in about user testing. One that asking to provide any more detail about the expectation of customer testing once schemes start to connect in April. So to kind of update based on what I've just said. So we know that user testing will be carried out to inform the ongoing design and development of the pensions dashboard service. And a really important aspect of that clearly is the user's experience, and we need to ensure that it's positive, effective and stable. So the testing will include testing and validating the end-to-end user journey and making sure that dashboard services meet users' needs. And as I alluded to, particularly around accessibility, that's something that's very important for MAPs. User research and testing has already played a part in the development and design of the service, and there's been a large amount of user research carried out by the MoneyHelper dashboard team already, for example, to help inform the initial design and build. However, once connection begins, we will then be able to commence the all-important testing of the live service with real data, which is likely to give us some much more in-depth insights into how people respond. This will begin with very small volumes initially, but gradually increase in the run-up to dashboards being publicly available. It's really important because testing with real data will help provide assurance that the dashboard standards are fit for purpose, and will also inform future updates as well as decisions about when dashboards will be made more freely available to the public. And as we mentioned, to ensure transparency for industry and other interested parties, we at PDP and also the MoneyHelper team is committed to regularly sharing updates and insights from the user testing. Further information will be provided on what this will look like closer to the first connection date in guidance and on the stage timetable for connection. But also, I think it's worth mentioning that that there is still a plan to let industry help create the front end of dashboard. So we've begun some engagement already with industry on the outline plan for user testing, and we're considering how we can broaden that out in the coming weeks, months to help finalise that plan going forward. And again, we had a question coming in about what happens when a scheme is connected on the after a staging date and the users being involved and how that's going to build up. So as I've just mentioned, we are expecting that to start off with small volumes and build up gradually. And again, this is part of the plans that we're developing at the moment. And so we'll make sure that those are shared with industry to help you do all the planning that we need, that you need to do as part of that as well. I'm sure that you have heard plenty of my voice, so I will have a look through and see if there are any questions for any of the other participants. And I think the regulators, there may be one or two for as we're going through. So there's one which I think we might already be answered, but it might be worth going through again. So is there any update? And sorry, I should say this is for Caroline. Is there any update on when the FCA registration process information might be published?
Yeah, happy to answer that. So I can't offer you a definitive date. What I would say is that our approach to registration codes is quite different to the TPRs. So I know that TPR is proactively mailing out registration codes in a phased order according to schemes staging dates. We, however, are going to have an inbound request for registration codes. So firms will need to complete I assure you, very short form in order to obtain your registration codes. Our registration codes will have a 30-day expiry, which is one of the reasons why we have not put them up on our website yet. They will be available on our website at a point much closer to staging dates commencing, because we don't want firms to be submitting and obtaining registration codes earlier than they can actively use them. But it is our expectation, either by the end of this year or very early into next, to publish all that material on our website alongside details of how to apply for the codes.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Caroline. Lucy, so you don't feel left out, a couple for you now, if that's okay. So one which I think I should know the answer to, will the results of the TPR readiness survey be published?
So it's in, yes, at some point is the short answer. Effectively, what we're trying to do, it's a survey that takes place over time. So obviously the first cohorts we surveyed were very small and niche. So, you know, the largest master trust. So we can't publish in such a way that would identify schemes. So we have to be a little bit careful. What we are looking at, which is possibly more helpful than actually the readiness surveys, how we can share the trends we're seeing in that survey, but also in the course of our industry engagement. So we already share information about hot topics through our communications, but also maybe we can share insights about what we're hearing about how people are preparing, what issues they're facing, etc. So we're having a think internally about how we can best communicate that. In our webinar, we will be talking about some of the hot topics, but also working with some of the partners and industry bodies as how we can disseminate the thinking more widely.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And while you're there, Lucy, if you don't mind, there's also a question that's more LGPS specific. It says the LGPS does not have trustees, but they do have pension boards, but the pension boards are not decision making. So who else will you be contacting? Will that be people like the scheme managers?
Yes, that's right. And the duties in LGPS apply to scheme managers, which is not the same as like a manager of a scheme as you might think of in the private pension world. They are defined in legislation, so it's the local authority for LGPS schemes. So yes, we write to the scheme managers who are the legally accountable party. These schemes should already have received some communications, and we will continue to work with the scheme managers, but we also work with other organisations such as the LGA to help support LGPS and firefighters and others specifically.
Brilliant. Perfect. Thank you very much, Lucy. So we've had a couple of questions in which are more related, I think, to the identification and matching, which I will try and pick up. One which I think we covered already, but I think bears repeating. So been asked if we can clarify if the user's address will be verified data as part of the pension finder service. And just to reiterate what I said earlier, that the user's address will be included in the find request as provided by the identity service, and that there will be checks carried out on that address to make sure that the address exists and through credit records as demonstrated as having an association with the user, but it's not verified as being the user's current address as part of that. So there is some checking and some work. I'm trying to avoid using the word verification because I think it gets a bit confusing if we use the same word for two different things. So it's not verified in the same way as some other aspects, but there is an element of checking and verification which takes place as part of that. And we will be updating the web pages on the PDP website shortly to reflect this as we go through. We also had a question looking or asking about what's required, especially around national insurance number in terms of the information that users provide. So the context being that schemes having to choose a matching criteria for their own pension scheme. They might include, for example, a requirement for the national insurance number because they know that the scheme data is good quality, but if they might not catch everyone if their national insurance number is not put in as part of the identity verification service. So I think, although it's clear that that national insurance number is not going to be a verified element, that we will be prompting users to include it as part of that, as part of the information they provide in their search to help support their search. And that the press release and the identity service page on the website provides more information about how the identity service works and how it interacts with find requests going forward. We've also had another question come in about matching, and it says, as all pension providers are building a matching criteria, what will happen if a customer matches one criteria, for example, company A, but fails with a second set of criteria used by company B? Will company B's data not be shared on the dashboard? And maybe either Lucy or Caroline might want to add if I don't cover this fully enough, but it's ultimately for each provider or scheme to define their own matching approach and where a match is made to share the information to the dashboard. So in the example given, company A and company B may have or may hold their records in different ways, and so it's very reasonable to have different matching approaches as part of that, but each should be seeking to make matches. And I guess the challenge here for company B, if they are not making a match, is to understand why they're not making a match, or at least making a partial match, and then going through the process of checking that individual to see whether it actually should be a full match. Lucy, Caroline, was there anything you wish to add to that?
No, I think it's worth, coming back to that point you made about partial match. I think that's going to be a very useful tool for providers, which is effectively where it matches some of your data, but not all of the data. And you can send a message which effectively says, we think we've got a pension for you. Please give us a call and give us more information. And then we can confirm if it's there or not. So I think schemes should definitely be preparing for what that looks like as well. And that will be a useful tool in these kind of scenarios.
Thank you. Really helpful. A couple more questions we've got time for. I think one that's come in, again, we may have answered, but worth repeating again, about whether the state pension will be ready to be part of the live testing and on pensions dashboards. And I think, as John was talking about earlier in his update from DWP, that yes, we are in PDP continuing to work very closely with DWP to support their connection. And my understanding is that this is progressing well, so we don't have any concerns that it will not be ready as part of that. John, I don't know if you had anything else to add.
No, that's perfect.
Brilliant, thank you. And a question which has come up a number of times: how and when will pensions dashboards be advertised to the general public? Which is always a very interesting one. So clearly an important part of planning for the MoneyHelper pensions dashboard and around dashboards more generally is around how best to raise awareness of it. But naturally, perhaps understandably, we don't really want to start advertising right now at this minute, because we don't want to create a lot of demands that we can't meet as part of that, to raise expectations that we can't fulfill. So we think it's important that we look at dashboards as part of a wider piece around planning for retirement more generally, and helping people to encouraging people to engage with their pensions. And we know there are a lot of industry campaigns around this at the moment, some involving Gemma Collins, for example. But we're looking forward to working with the industry and our partners, including our industry delivery partners, as part of this, to develop the approach for how we're going to do that going forward. Okay, I think we've got time for a couple more questions, which I'll just try and pick up here. So we've asked for a question for us to be a little bit more specific as to when we might see the next version of the PDP data standards. So just a quick update on that. The data standards changes are undergoing a final review internally at the moment before being shared with our volunteer participants, and then they will be published. So we can't be a little bit more specific, but we're looking to do that as soon as possible, and we'll keep everybody informed of the developments as we go through. And a really good question, I think one I'd like to see, asking if there are any forums for the project managers preparing for this. I'm sure there'll be lots of lessons learned for us all, and it's really heartwarming when people are keen to be involved and to share experiences as well. So we are looking at what communities of interest people might be interested in developing. We're continuously learning from the experiences of our volunteer participants, making improvements to the connection journey. So we're doing part of that already, I think, with those who are part of the volunteer participant process. And we also continue to engage through a range of other fora, such as the PASA and ABI dashboard working groups, the TPR forum for third-party administrators. So, but if you're not part of those and are still keen to be engaged, we're always open to suggestions for how we can engage more broadly. And please do get in touch with us through the support hub on the website. That has now taken us up to full time, I think, so I'm afraid I'm going to have to draw the question and answer session to a close. Apologies if you did ask a question and we didn't manage to answer it in the time we had available, but as ever on these calls, there are plenty of questions, and as I promised earlier, we will put the answers to those in writing and circulate them at a later date. To just round everything off, firstly, I'd like to thank all of our speakers for keeping to time, but also for being excellent in terms of the content. So to Lucy, to Caroline, to Kirsty, to John, and to Ali, thank you very much to all of you. Thank you very much for the team who have put this together. It's always a thankless task to make sure that everything comes together, and we've had approaching 300 people on this call today. So thank you all very much as well for joining us and for the very good questions that we've had so far. Please do visit our website. In the fullness of time, the full progress update report will be published there. But in the meantime, lots of further information on programme developments, and that's the best way to keep in touch with us and how things are going. So thank you all very much for your participation today, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Have a good afternoon.